Thinking of building an arcade cabinet for your house? This is the video for you. So before we get stuck into some of the actual work we need to do on this cabinet, let's have a 30-second introduction because this is the very first video on this new YouTube channel for me. So my name's Bronson. I live in New Zealand, a small town called Taupo, right in the middle of the North Island of New Zealand, way down the bottom of the world. And I'm fast approaching my 40th birthday. And so I was kind of thinking and talking to my wife about midlife crisis, right? I've got options, I suppose. I could maybe get into barbecuing, smoked meats. I get into the gym. That's not going to happen. I could get into crypto maybe. And then I had an idea that I would love to start building out some arcade cabinets, fixing some old arcade cabinets, and with the ultimate goal of basically building an arcade in the shed I'm sitting in. I'll show you this shed in another video, but we've got a beautiful big shed here on our property. I would love to box off the back half of it and have my own arcade with cabinets like this running, more modern emulators with lots of games. I'd love to have retro cabinets, with original boards. I'd love to have pinball machines, claw machines, coin pushers, all sorts. So that is my ultimate goal, to build an arcade in the back of my shed here. But I've got to start small, and I've got to start with, obviously, I've got to wet my beak a little bit, right, and start with a small project. So I picked myself up this cabinet here. Now, I was going to build my own cabinet, and there are plenty of really good instructions on the internet. There's also companies like I know in America that send you a cabinet flat packed, like they must CNC or laser cut them out of plywood, and they send you it and you put it together and you do your own wrap. You can do your own marquee lights and your own wrap and that sort of thing. You can buy coin mechanisms for them. I happen to be browsing a site here in New Zealand called Trade Me, which is a bit like, I guess, eBay in America. And I saw this cabinet for sale. It was for sale for $140. It does not have a screen. It does not have any computer bits inside. It does have a light in the marquee. It does have an old coin mech with a Sega sticker on it. So it must be an original coin mech. It does have a plate that goes here for the controls. I picked it up for $140, which I thought was pretty good. Actually from a guy who has a fish and chip shop here in New Zealand. New Zealand is, fish and chips are quite popular here in New Zealand and Australia. And there is a fish and chip shop called Fish Phase. And he's actually got a room off the side of the fish and chip shop full of arcade machines that you can play for free while you're waiting for your fish and chips. So he actually had a shed full of these when I picked up. He had some original Space Invaders cabinets and all sorts of good stuff. But he sold me this one for $140. So I rented a trailer last weekend and I went and picked it up. I think it'll be a really good starting point for me because I am not very good with woodworking. I'd like to be better. I like tinkering with electronics, but I'm not very good with wood. So I thought if I buy this cabinet, at least it's a really good starting point. I'm not sure if this is an original Point Blank arcade cabinet. Point Blank was the cabinet that would have had a couple of guns here, the pistols for the Point Blank game. In Japan, that was called Gun Bullet. And so this does have a gun bullet wrap on the sides. But the wrap overlaps in places, so I don't think it's an original wrap. But it is a really good starting point for me. I'll leave that original marquee, I think, for now. I'll leave this neat sort of space bezel around the screen. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure of the origins of this cabinet, but I think it'll be a good starting point. I would like to get into some like original cabinets as well further down the line. I've got my eye on a few on Facebook Marketplace that don't work. So I'd love to try and fix some of them up with original CRT screens and stuff. But yeah, that's a project for another day. We will start off fairly simple. We're going to put a Raspberry Pi in this old computer monitor. We're going to redo the joysticks and buttons on the front, and I'll show you all how we wire those in. I'm probably going to run RetroPie on the Raspberry Pi and just run a bunch of ROMs on this machine. But yeah, we'll get into that in the next video. This first video is going to be all about the hardware. So the guy that sold me this machine also gave me this front panel, which is very handy. I was thinking originally I'd make a panel here out of plywood. Again, I'm not that good with woodworking, but I was going to try and fashion sort of a panel here out of ply and then maybe wrap it. But he gave me this when I went to pick it up, which I'm very stoked about. So it's got 2 players, controls for 2 players, 3 buttons each side, and then your start 1 and 2 player buttons down there. And this basically slips on the front of the cabinet here and goes up like that. I do need to find a way of fixing it. I might just put a little screw in the corner maybe to hold it in while we're getting it all going. So we need to do 2 things today. We need to wire up all the buttons. which I will show you how to do shortly. And then we need to figure out how to mount an old computer monitor in here. This cabinet is designed for a square CRT, television CRT monitor. They are quite hard to come by in New Zealand now, and people charge like $200 to $300 for a 22, 24-inch CRT TV. They're obviously harder to mount as well because they're heavier. So I thought just to get in the door with arcade machines, to learn as we go, I'm just going to put an old computer monitor in there, get it all running, and then we'll give this machine a bit of an upgrade in the future and try and restore it with an original CRT monitor. So yeah, let's go over to the workbench and we will talk about buttons and joysticks. Our buttons and joysticks may seem quite daunting, but they don't need to be because they're actually quite simple to wire up. They are for this kit that we're doing anyway. So you can pick up a sort of set of all the buttons you need, joysticks, and also your control boards. You can pick a set up for like $20 off AliExpress. On eBay, like a set seems to go for about $40. Now obviously these aren't the most advanced sets and buttons you can buy in the world, but they do have everything you need to get started. So in the particular set I bought, a bunch of buttons, red and blue buttons, 1 and 2 player start buttons, which will go down in the front, 2 joysticks, and 2 of these pretty clever little boards. So these are what is going to go between all of our controls and the actual computer. Now, you get 2 of these in the kit I bought anyway. One's for player 1, one's for player 2. And these all are marked as to where they need to be plugged in. So up the top here it says up, down, right and left. So up, down, right and left will be separate cables coming out of the joystick, and they'll get plugged into the corresponding plugs on this board. Same thing for the buttons. Button 1, button 2, button 3, start. So they'll all get plugged into here. These boards, you can also buy them instead of the individual plugs and cables. You can get the ribbon cables because some of the controllers, the joysticks will have a ribbon cable that comes out of it and that'll get plugged in. So one cable from here to here, which is quite clever. Now this has a big plug on the end of this board, and you also get a couple of these. So that'll plug into the board like so. And on the other end is a USB plug. So we're going to end up with 2 USB plugs. All our controls will feed into 2 different boards, 2 different USB plugs, and those will plug straight into the front of our little computer, our Raspberry Pi. We're going to put inside this in the next video. So let's start off by fixing all our buttons in place, and then we will push our joysticks through and we'll bolt those onto the case. There is going to be a little trick with wiring in your joysticks. So basically when you look at the back of this, you'll see that when you push the controller one way, it pushes a switch down. Now the thing we need to bear in mind is that when we push this up, like so, it is triggering a switch down the bottom. So the switch at the top here is not the up switch, the switch at the bottom is. So when we flip it over, it'll all be in reverse. So it will be down, up, right, left. Because when I push this toggle up, you'll see it triggers the down switch, if that makes sense. So there is a chance we could wire this in completely backwards, but yeah, it's opposite. So let's go ahead and get everything in here, then we'll wire up both boards, and then we need to figure out how to mount the screen. I'm pretty happy with how this is looking. It's starting to look like a proper arcade. So we'll put the extra 2 buttons in the front now. We've got one that's got a 2-person icon in it for player 2. It'll go on there, and 1 player in there. Now, behind each button sits a little switch, like so. And this switch is actually what gives it that little clicky noise. Now, some buttons don't have an external switch like this. They just have 2 terminals out of the back that you put your spade connectors on. But the ones I've got, these are Zippy branded. They have these little switches, and they click in to the back like so without breaking it. And that is what gives you the cool, like so. That gives you the cool clicky arcade noise when you push the button. Now, like I said, there are some buttons that aren't as clicky as that, if you prefer, but these are a good starting point for me. There is one thing that could catch you out though, and that is there is 3 prongs, terminals on the back of the switch. These are basically so we can have this switch configured in 2 different ways. Now, one will assume that the circuit is always on, and when you push the button, it turns the circuit off. It breaks the circuit. That's not what we want. We want the one that is always closed. So essentially, the circuit is open, and when we push the button, it completes the circuit, just like a light switch, right? So what we're actually going to do on all of these switches is we're going to ignore the top prong, and we're going to use the bottom two. And our little cables that came in this kit, they have little 4.8mm spade connectors on the end. They're just going to slide onto that, and the other end, the plug is going to plug into that little board. So what I've done in the back here to make my life easier is I've oriented all these the same way, so that all the terminals will be the same way. So this side over here will be player 1, and the blue side over there will be player 2. So I've clicked them all in, as you can see, all the different switches. I've still got one to put in there. What I'm going to do is first wire up each switch, and then I'm going to wire up these, each switch on the corner. It's pretty similar to how we wire up these little button switches here. These have the same sort of terminals on each corner, so I'll have 4 cables coming out of each controller, and then 1 cable coming out of each of those buttons, and 1 coming out of the start button into that little board. Then that little board runs into my Raspberry Pi. So yeah, let's wire up the buttons, and then we'll talk just about that up, down, left, right, back to front nonsense going on over there. So we're going to do the same for each 4 corners of this joystick here. So when we push the joystick up, we are looking for which switch. Now I did mark these out, I did write on the back of these, but I actually got them wrong. So when we push the joystick up from the back, I can see that it's pushing this lever down here. So this is up, this is down, this is right, no, that is right, and that is left. Yeah, I think I just need to do these one at a time. So we'll start with up. So up will be the bottom. It actually doesn't matter for the purpose of clipping these on, I suppose. It only really matters when we come back to plug them into the board. For our buttons, we've got a whole row of plugs here, but we're basically just going left to right. So we're going 1, 2, 3. So that's our top one. And the button there. Apologies, my neighbor just started mowing her lawn. Hopefully you guys don't hear that over the mic. I've got 1, 2, and 3. And again, we could just come back and shuffle these around. These little boards obviously give you lots of options if you've got bigger pads, or if you're running 4 buttons, that sort of thing. So the second thing I want to do today is mount the monitor. Now the dimensions of the screen that I need for that cabinet is 20 inches. So a 20-inch CRT TV would be perfect. I can't find one. So I'm going to use what I got lying around because I want to start having a jam, right? I want to have a play. So I do have a couple of old Dell monitors here and an LG. Now you'll see different things that people do with monitors in these cabinets. What some people do is put a widescreen in like that, 22-inch widescreen, and they just have the screen resolution set to only show a square, 1024 image, because obviously a lot of those old games, or most of the old games we're going to be playing, don't play in widescreen. Some people actually have artwork down here on the actual screen, almost like a desktop background, and the game in the middle. Some people mount these screens this way and then have artwork at the top and the bottom. So I think the screen for now, we'll probably put this one in because it fits exactly in place, and all I'll need to do is fashion up a bracket to hold the top and the bottom and hold it in. And then we'll obviously play in the middle. I would love to put a CRT TV in here or find a 20-inch square monitor. I do have this one here, but if memory serves, this one is 19 inches wide. I need a screen that's basically the size of this entire, with the bezel as well. 20 inches is 52 centimeters. So that's bang on 52 centimeters. Decisions. This one will be harder to mount, and it's also a lot heavier. That's a really heavy monitor, actually. This one will be super easy to mount, but obviously we'll have black space on the side, which won't look ideal. So what I might do is pop this monitor in, just for the sake of getting something up and running and having a play. And then we're definitely going to keep our eyes peeled for a 20-inch CRT TV. because that would be the ultimate, I think. But that will do in the meantime. The annoying thing about square monitors is they're quite hard to come by these days. I bought this one off Facebook Marketplace, but I've probably thrown away, I actually work in IT in my day job, and I've probably thrown away a dozen of these monitors over the years, bigger ones, smaller ones, because obviously not many people use square monitors anymore, so a bit unfortunate. And I guess you guys watching at home, you've probably thrown away X amount of CRT TVs over the years as well, which I could be using right now. So yeah, what we're going to have to do is fashion up a bracket. I bought some brackets right here, and these are called Maker Bracket angle bracket. And what I'm going to do is actually bend the bottom of this bracket up like so. So at one of these, and it's basically going to make a little cradle that the monitor can sit in, and then I'll have some sort of bracket up the top. I think you're supposed to bend these with a vise, like put them in a vise and bend them. I think that's the whole idea. You could buy this stuff in different lengths and you can make your own bracket. I don't have a vise, but I do have a hammer and a pair of pliers. So yeah, we'll see if we can fashion up some brackets and then we'll see if we can get that installed. I think what it will mean is we will have a bit of white space above and below the monitor. This cabinet actually has some strips of painted cardboard in there already. I'm guessing the guy that ran this cabinet before actually had a monitor like this in it. So we'll see if we can fashion up some brackets now with a hammer, and then we'll install the monitor, and that should be us for hardware, I think, and then we can get onto the fun software bit. Let's see if we can't bend this. How cool would it be if I could just bend it by hand? What are my chances? Here we go. Get these little soft IT hands. See if we can do. Oh no, I want to bend it there. See if we can bend this. Oh yes, look at that. Yeah, and there we go. You can kind of see what I'm thinking there. I'll screw that to the cabinet, and then we'll make a little bracket that the monitor slides down, and then we'll just need some sort of clip up the top. Well, this bit's proving tricky to film, but I threw out those brackets. They were terrible, I know. Some of you might have left this video just because of how yuck those brackets look that I just made. What I realized is the monitor, when it's actually sitting up in the front, I'll use this as a demonstration, it actually sits really snugly in the cabinet. And what you've got down each side is a strip of wood here and here that I can actually fix a bit of wood to, like so, to hold the monitor up against the front face. So all I need is a bottom bit of wood in the middle, you know, so that the monitor's centered rather, for the monitor to rest on, and then I'll have a strip of wood screwed in each side like that. That'll keep it really tidy, and then when I come to remove the monitor later on and put a proper CRT in there, it should be pretty straightforward. All right, now I was going to pop the monitor in. This might be. I was going to pop the monitor in, sorry, it's quite echoey in there. I noticed there's this bit of paper here, which you can see, which is kind of old, and actually, let's pull that out. This bit of paper is obviously designed to help mask the bottom of the screen for a widescreen monitor. So there's one at the top. Now I might just pop down to the local warehouse stationery here and get a thicker bit of card, like maybe even a bit of foam core I can stick, because you can see the bracket that I've put in there for the screen to rest on. So actually I can pop the screen in and show you how that would look, or how I'm envisioning this widescreen going in. So it's going to sit on that bottom bracket like that. Oh gosh. It's going to sit on that bottom bracket and slide in like so. I can't actually hold that and come around and show you what I mean. But as you can see, there's a space under here, right? So that looks terrible. So I'm going to duck out of the house now and grab a bit of foam core, or maybe core flute, or something a bit more rigid, a thicker bit of cardboard. We can cut out, black bit of card, we can fashion a piece to hide that, maybe redo the top bit as well. Well, this is turning into a little bit of a bigger job than I thought, but I've taken the glass out, which actually was only a bunch of screws across the top. And my talented wife, I've called upon her services. She's cut a piece of foam core out to sit up there. I was just going to put a strip along the top, strip along the bottom, but she thinks it'd be better if we actually made a nice little bezel out of this foam core. we're going to double side tape it in place, and we'll hide this bottom bracket here, and then the monitor will fit really good. So I think it's going to look really nice. Unfortunately, because of these lips, we can't just get one big sheet in there with a I actually bought a small sheet. I should have bought a bigger one. So there will be a little seam here, but yeah, we'll double side that in, do a bottom bit, a couple of side bits, put the monitor in from behind, screw the control panel on, and then I think we'll be done for part one. Slide that up. Look at that. That is a million times better. My wife's done a cracking job at that. Thank you, Chelsea. There are some seams here, but bear in mind the glass is going to go over, and the glass actually has a bezel on it as well, so it's going to hide a lot of that, but I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to put the monitor through from the back, fix it in place, and we'll see how it looks from the front. Then we'll put the glass back on, trim back on, screw the controls in. I'm excited to see what it looks like. So I made a little bracket on one side that the monitor tucks into, sits down like that. Hold that with one hand. Glass down in there. Boom, look at that. I probably need a better way of mounting those in the future, but I think I'll get away with it for now. That has a lip that sits down in there. And then moment of truth. Nope. Moment of truth. That should slide up there. Oh, look at that. That's beautiful. Now, put a horrible big wood screw here, which I will come back and address in the future with a better screw, but I just need to hold this in place for now. I would like to redo this whole panel, like I said earlier, because it's pretty beat up, but I need to just sort of tack it in place, if you will, while I test it out, right? So there we go. Look at that. Player one, still missing a bolt. We need to drill that out, put another bolt in. Same with this one. 3 buttons there. Player two, 3 buttons there. And your start buttons down the bottom. Screen's all in. Bezel's all done. I'm very happy with that. There's still a load of work I need to do on this, so I need to fix things like the coin box, the marquee light. I need to fix some stuff on the cabinet. But what we're going to do in the next episode is we're going to put the brains in. We're going to put the Raspberry Pi in. I've got a Raspberry Pi 3 or Raspberry Pi 4, I think, on order at the moment. So the next episode is going to be all about the software. We're going to plug that in. We're going to update the Raspberry Pi. Then we're going to install RetroPie on it. We're going to chuck a ROM on it. We're going to put it all together, and we're going to have our first play. The kids, I've got 3 kids, by the way, and they are hanging out for a go on this. So yeah, lots of work to do, but I'm pretty happy with today's effort. If you want to follow along on this arcade building adventure, there'll be a couple more videos in this series. I've actually got my eye on a few more arcade machines on Facebook Marketplace, so I'm all in. I want to build out my big arcade. I want to get this machine up and running. I want to look at some machines that maybe aren't working, see if I can get those working. I'd love to work my way towards a pinball machine, like I said, but rather expensive. So if that's something that interests you, hit that subscribe button, and follow along on the adventure. There'll be a video out every week, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.